beautiful city of Wilsonville in the state of Oregon. My name is Jong-woo Han. I am the president of Korean War Legacy Foundation, which has about more than 1,500 Korean War veterans interviewed, not only from the United States, but also other 21 countries that participated in the Korean War. We are doing this to, first of all, to preserve your memory, because it's been already 70 years ago. And we want to honor your service and your sacrifice and other Korean War veterans. But most importantly, I think Korean War has been known as forgotten war, and we want to challenge that because there are so much good things came out of your service. So we want to use this interview as a curricular resources for the teachers so that they can use in their classroom when they're talking about the Korean War in the context of the Cold War. It's my great pleasure and honor to meet you, sir. And please introduce yourself. What is your name?
My name is George Van Hoomissen.
Could you spell it?
George is George.
Mm-hmm.
The last name is Van Hoomissen, which is two words, V-A-N space capital H-O-O-M-I-S-S-E-N.
What is the ethnic origin of this last name?
Van Hoomissen is a Belgian, Flemish, from the northern part of Belgium.
Mm-hmm. Beautiful country. I was there.
Yes.
And I did the interview, the veterans from Belgium. What is your birthday, sir?
March 7, 1930.
So you are 92.
Correct.
You look very good, sir. Huh?
Thank you.
You don't look like a 90. Do you have any secret formula? Special whiskey or any special food?
Good luck.
Good luck. Can't be any better than that, right?
Correct.
Yeah. So where were you born?
Portland, Oregon.
Right here. Huh. And tell me about your family background when you were growing up, your parents and your siblings, what they were doing and so on.
There were 7 children in our family, 4 girls.
7 children.
7 children.
Wow.
4 girls, 3 boys. My father was a plumber.
Yep. So 1930, so it must have been just 1 year after the Great Depression.
Yes.
Do you remember any hard things of those Great Depression days? You were young.
I was born in 1930.
Yeah.
My father used to say that my birth is what brought on the Depression.
That's not good.
But I was never cold. I was never hungry. I was never unloved. And
Again, you were lucky.
I was very fortunate.
Excellent. And tell me about your educational background. What school did you go through, and when did you graduate high school? What high school?
I attended parochial schools in the neighborhood, and I graduated from Central Catholic High School.
Central
Catholic High School in Portland. Graduated in 1947. And went on to the University of Portland.
So you must be a good student.
Good enough.
To get into the university. And what did you study?
I majored in business administration.
Very good. So let me ask this question. When you were in high school, Central Catholic High School, did they teach you anything about Korea?
Not to my knowledge.
Nothing?
Nothing.
Okay. Now you are a Korean War veteran.
Yes.
You know about Korea.
Yes.
Tell me, what do you know about Korea?
Well, I know that the history of Korea is very complex, but in the later years, before World War II, Korea was occupied by the Japanese. As a result of World War II, Korea was liberated by American and Allied forces in the south, and in the north, the Russian army liberated Korea from the Japanese. Korea was invaded by the North Koreans in 1950. The war started in the summer of 1950.
And that's why you were there.
And I was there, but I didn't arrive in Korea until 1952.
So tell me about, were you drafted?
No, when I was in high school, I was 17 years old.
Yeah.
I joined the United States Marine Corps Reserve. They had started a new unit in Portland, Oregon, and I joined the reserve. Then the Korean War started in 1950, but I was not activated to go to Korea because I was in college, and I was in a program, a Marine Corps program, that was the equivalent of Reserve Officer Training Corps, ROTC.
ROTC.
And so I was permitted to stay in college until I graduated in 1951. So I was not drafted. When I graduated from college in 1951, I was commissioned a second lieutenant, United States Marine Corps Reserve. And then in the summer of 1951, I was ordered to attend officer basic school at Quantico, Virginia.
Yeah. But already you knew that Korean War broke out, right?
Yes.
And so from there, when did you leave for Korea, from where?
I was in officer candidate program from the summer of 1951 until December of 1952. And then I was ordered to Camp Pendleton, California in January of 1952. I was a platoon leader in the 1st Marine Brigade at Camp Pendleton until March of 1952, when I was sent to Korea.
From Pendleton.
From Camp Pendleton.
Yeah. And where did you arrive and when in Korea?
I believe I arrived at a place called Ashcom City, which was a port near Seoul.
So you arrived in Incheon.
Incheon.
Yeah. When was it? Is it March in 52 or April?
March or April of 1952.
Okay. And from there you went to the Aspen City.
Well, from there I went to Seoul.
Seoul.
And from Seoul I went up to the front lines as a 2nd lieutenant platoon leader.
Do you remember the name of area where you were there in the front line? Was it near to Panmunjom or?
It was near Panmunjom. We could see Panmunjom from our trench. And the Chinese were north of us, and the Chinese were occupying an area called a mountain, a very high rise called Taedoksan.
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 Yeah. And what was the situation at the time? Was it there were severe battles engaged, or how intensive was that?
There were not severe battles at that time in our area. There were severe battles in other areas of Korea on the front lines. But constant artillery, airstrikes, we had all of that.
What was your unit? 1st Marine?
1st Marine Division, 1st Marine Regiment.
How about battalion? And company?
I don't remember.
So you were 2nd lieutenant and platoon leader. How many soldiers under your leadership?
Basically 40, 45. Not soldiers, Marines.
Marines. That is my biggest mistake. Please accept my apology. So tell me the daily routine. Where did you sleep? What did you eat? What did you do, like a patrol, or what was your main mission, and where did you sleep? Things like that. Tell me the typical day of your service there, duties.
We slept in a bunker on the front lines. Sometimes we would be in reserve, so we would have better accommodations. We would go on patrol forward of the trench, and And
That's so dangerous, wasn't it?
yes,
Patrolling.
yes.
Tell me any episode you still remember where that you were in a dangerous moment that you could have been killed, or
Every day.
tell me anything that you remember.
Well, I remember being there perhaps 2 or 3 months, and I was fortunate that I met an officer from the division headquarters who was from near Portland,
Ah,
and he was the 1st Marine Division G2. He was the intelligence officer for the 1st Marine Division. And he said, would I like to be in the intelligence section and get out of the trench? And I said, of course. And so in June of 1952, I was transferred back to the division headquarters in the G2 section, intelligence. And I was there for about 6 months. And at that time, I had a classmate from high school who was in the Air Force. He was flying F-86s. And he said, George, you should get into the air. And I said, well, I can't, I'm a Marine. I can't get into the Air Force.
that's too much transformation.
But I found out that there was a Marine squadron of observers near the division headquarters. And so I contacted the commanding officer of that Marine squadron, and I said I would like to join the squadron. He said, well, I would be happy to have you in the squadron. However, there are about 40 people on the list to join the squadron. So your chances of getting into the squadron are 0. And I said, well, if the facts change later on, you know where I'll be. He said, thank you, I will remember. And about 3 months later,
You were fortunate again.
he called me and he said, if you're still interested in joining the squadron is called VMO6.
What does that mean?
V meant heavier than air. It was not a helicopter squadron. It was small airplanes. V, heavier than air. M was Marine. And O was observation. Marine Observation Squadron 6.
B as in victory or B as in boy?
V as in victory.
Yeah.
VMO 6.
Mm-hmm.
And so I met with the commanding officer of VMO 6. and he said, if you're still interested in joining the squadron, we have a vacancy. And I said, well, I would like to join the squadron. But what happened to the 40 people that were on the list ahead of me?
Yeah.
And he replied, we've had 2 or 3 airplanes shot down since we last talked. And so some of them went home. They had served their time in Korea. But we do have a vacancy. So I said, well, I would like to join the squadron. And I was a member of that squadron until I came back to the States from Korea in the spring of 1953.
So what did you do as a squadron member? You didn't know how to fly.
No, I'm in the back seat.
Back seat.
With binoculars and directing airstrikes and directing artillery fire on the Chinese lines. Our squadron, if you remember the TV movie MASH, our squadron had helicopters identical with those used in the TV
MASH.
series MASH, and they would bring the wounded soldiers, the wounded Marines, into our airfield, and there was a MASH hospital about 1,000 yards away from our landing field.
Yep.
And then we had the observation aircraft that were Cessna 170s. The pilot up front was a Marine pilot, most of whom had served in World War II. They had stayed in the reserve, and they were activated in 1950 to come fight the Korean War.
So were there any dangerous moments? Anti-aircraft sort of, cannons and artillery that you encountered?
There were always dangerous because we were flying over the Chinese lines. And we would fly at about 3,000 feet. The Chinese rifles did not have range, so they couldn't hit our airplane, and the Chinese anti-aircraft wouldn't, it would explode at about 5,000 feet, and we would fly at about 3,500 feet or 4,000 feet in the sweet spot.
What's the most difficult thing you still remember or you hated?
I was 22 years old, and when you are 22 years old, you fear nothing. And I was 10 miles at the end. I was 10 miles behind the division headquarters. So we did not fear that the Chinese were going to attack us back at VMO6.
Where was VMO6 located? Was it in Gimpo?
No, VMO6 was located about 10 miles southwest of Tadaksan.
Edison?
Tadaksan was a mountain range.
Yeah. So there was a runway?
Yes.
Wow. And enemies didn't destroy that?
No, I think it was beyond the range of their artillery. They had virtually no air cover.
Right.
And there's no threat from the sea. So we were
Able to maintain that.
Seoul was virtually demolished. The Chinese had conquered Seoul probably twice and destroyed most of the buildings. And I can remember the national capital was a shambles. Syngman Rhee was the president at the time.
Yeah.
And that's when I was sent forward maybe 25 miles to the north.
Now, have you seen any modern Korean pictures? Do you know about what's going on in Korea in terms of economy and so on?
Yes, yes.
What do you know? Please tell us.
Well, I think the Korean economy is booming. It's one of the largest economies in the world.
So what do you think about such transformation when you left Korea in the spring of 1953? Had you ever imagined that Korea would become like this today?
No.
No? Why
No.
not?
Well, I think the Korean economy has been a miracle.
So George, what do you think that is your legacy as a Korean War veteran?
Well, I am proud to say that I am a veteran of the military service of the United States. Marine.
Yeah.
And I think that the United States did the right thing in coming to the aid of Korea. I can remember when General Eisenhower came to Korea, I believe it was in the winter of 1952. We all saw him. When he was campaigning for president,
Yeah.
General Eisenhower said, if I am elected president, I will go to Korea and try to solve the problem.
He did.
And he did that.
What is the impact of your service as a Korean War veteran upon your life after you returned from Korea?
When I returned from Korea, I went to law school at Georgetown University Law School, and I was on the GI Bill. So the government paid for my legal education.
Excellent.
I stayed in the Marine Corps Reserve for about 34 years, and I attended many of the military schools, including the Judge Advocate General School. I stayed in a reserve unit.
Did you practice the law in the Marine?
No. I was designated as a Marine Corps judge, but I was never a judge on active duty. So I was the commanding officer of a reserve unit in Portland, Oregon that had about 20 members. I practiced law in Portland, Oregon for about 5 years.
As a civilian?
As a civilian. And then I was elected the district attorney of Multnomah County, which is Portland. Then I was appointed a circuit judge by the governor of Oregon. And I was a circuit judge for about 8 years, and then I was elected to the Oregon Court of Appeals, and I did that for about 10 years, and then I was elected to the Oregon Supreme Court, and I did that for 12 years, and then I retired.
It's my honor to meet you, Judge.
Thank you.
Oh, so that's a pretty good legacy, in fact.
Yes.
See, Korean War should be not forgotten.
I agree. I
think we really want to challenge the reality of Korean War as a forgotten one, because I believe that there are so much good things came out of your service and so many other 1.9 million soldiers who were in the theater. And there were about 36,595 American soldiers were killed during the Korean War and afterwards due to the wounds. And so we are dedicating the Wall of Remembrance, where that their names will be inscribed in the Korean War Veterans Memorial Park in Washington, D.C. My foundation will host World Congress of History Teachers during that period so that teachers can observe the dedication ceremony of the Wall of Remembrance. And that's how we want to promote the need for teachers to teach more about the Korean War and the need for our younger generations to learn from the Korean War, the lessons. So that's what we are trying to do, and your interview will be a great addition to the whole digital archive. Thank you so much again.
You're welcome.